Shalom. This week we are reading Parshat Yisro. It's time for the giving of the Torah, the Sinai revelation, and we are going from one mega event to the next. Last week in Parshat Beshalach, we read about Kriyat Yamsuf, the splitting of the Sea of Reeds, and we know that that was such a huge cataclysmic event that affected all of nature. The natural laws were suspended. The whole world knew about the splitting of the sea. All the water in the world was affected. And so too, when it comes to the central events in the history of humanity, the rendezvous between God and man, that happened at Mount Sinai. God literally descended on Mount Sinai to meet humanity, to give over the Torah. Nature was totally suspended. Not a wind blew, not a bird chirped. There was total silence. The whole world was still. And God sought out man through Israel, made himself known. Our sages tell us that everyone was healed and that death itself was temporarily suspended. So now, at this moment, the real program begins. The program for the resting of the divine presence in this world, the program for sanctifying God's name, for being connected, for uplifting humanity. This is the program. And in Egypt, God saw the oppression of his people, and he told Moshe, I'm going to save them. I've seen their oppression, their burden, they're crying out. I'm going to rescue them from their suffering. But at the same time, he also said, send my people that they shall serve me. And we knew that we were leaving Egypt in order to serve God. So were we leaving Egypt to get free? Or were we leaving Egypt to begin another type of life of bondage? These verses that God says, send them out in order to serve me, don't seem to go along the same lines as the verses that spoke of God's rescuing his people from their burden. And in fact, some people do say, all these commandments that we have to keep, that we received at Mount Sinai, they're such a burden, it's all or nothing, and we're so confined and so shackled by these laws, and it's a life of bondage. So which is it? Or really, I guess the question is, what is freedom? And what is servitude? And again, we read about the whole event of the Sinai revelation. We understand that this is the absolute watershed event, the seminal event, not only in the life of Israel, but in the life of all of humanity, because it seems to be some sort of indication that God really wants to have a relationship with mankind, that he actually would suspend nature and meet halfway. And when we read the verses that describe the Sinai revelation, we read that Hashem said to Moshe, go to the people and sanctify them today and tomorrow. They shall wash their clothing. All these verses, you shall set boundaries for the people round about, saying, beware of ascending the mountain, touching its edge. And when the extended blast of the shofar is sounded, ostensibly after the revelation of the giving of the Torah, b'mshoch hayovel, when the yovel is sounded, they may then ascend the mountain. So verses continue and tell us that the giving of the Torah was accompanied by shofar blasts. So what is the significance of the shofar blasts? Is this just Jewish sound effects? Like, how could you give the Torah without some shofar in the background? One of my grandchildren was drawing a picture of God giving the Torah at Sinai. So I see this figure with some kind of clothing, and I said, who's that? And she told me that's Moshe. And I said, what's that? And she said, that's his tallis. Because how could you receive the Torah without wearing a tallis? So also, how could you receive the Torah without a lot of shofar blasts? But what's really the significance of the yovel? This word yovel, I believe, is a hint to understanding the secret balance between the servitude, the bondage of Egypt, and this new life of serving God that we received at Mount Sinai. Because the word Yovel, which is a word for the shofar and the shofar blast, really the root of that word has a connotation of bringing home. After all, the Jubilee year, the Yovel, is the year of homecoming. It's the year of the freeing of the slaves, the release of debts and land of lease. And the shofar then is blown as a sign of the commencement of the Yovel, of the year of homecoming. And also, when we read in the book of Joshua, the procession that encircled Jericho. So we read in chapter 6, Jericho had shut its gates and was barred because of the children of Israel. None went out and none came in. And Hashem said to Joshua, "See, I have given into your hand Jericho and its king, the mighty warriors. And you shall circle the city. All the men of war go round about the city once. Thus shall you do 6 days. 7 priests shall bear 7 trumpets of ram's horns before the ark, and on the 7th day you shall encircle the city 7 times, and the Kohanim shall blow the trumpets. And it shall be that when they make again a Yovel, a long blast with a ram's horn, when you hear the sound of the trumpet, all the people shall shout a great shout, and the wall of the city shall fall down in its place, and the people shall go up, every man opposite him." So the secret of conquering Jericho is also Bimshoch HaYovel, the Yovel, the extended blast of the shofar. Yovlim were blown, and these signals were not blown as signals of war, because Jericho wasn't conquered by the sword. So, in a way, the shofar blasts were like signals to the walls of the city to free the city, Yovel, and give it back, give it now to the children of Israel, its rightful owners. So we could understand on a simple level that the blowing of the Yovel at this moment, in the verse that we cited above, is a signal for returning back, for the discharge of the people. It is the ending of the ceremony of the giving of the Torah. But on a much deeper level, we can understand that just as it was used in Jericho, and just as it's used as a signal for the Jubilee year, the year of homecoming and the freedom, so too, the shofar, the Yovel that was blown at Mount Sinai was a signal that now you are free. Just as in the Jubilee year, the slaves go free, well, now you are servants of the Almighty, but now actually you are truly free. And this, of course, reminiscent of the famous statement that our sages make, a play on words, on one of the verses in the Torah that describes the writing on the tablets of the law, that they were charut al haluchot, that the handwriting of God was engraved on the tablets, and how our sages tell us that since there's actually no vowel marks in the Torah itself, that it can also be interpreted in a different way. And our sages tell us, don't read this word as charut al haluchot, that the words of God were engraved on the tablets, but read it as cherut al haluchot, that they were freedom on the tablets. And our sages continue and say, freedom from what? Freedom from illusion, freedom from death, freedom from oppression. So here we are at Mount Sinai. The whole natural world is held in abeyance. All of creation is literally trembling. In the midst of all of this, Israel stands upright. God proclaims himself with the first word, Anochi, not Ani, but Anochi. And people misunderstand this first of the 10 commandments to be a statement of faith, or possibly the positive commandment of believing in God. But this too is much deeper, because the difference between Anochi and Ani is that Anochi bespeaks an intimate connection between the speaker and the person being addressed. And so God proclaims to the whole world, I am your Anochi. I am to be your God. And that is the goal of this freedom. And that is the true freedom from oppression and illusion and death. For us to take up that invitation, that initiative, to develop that relationship with the Anochi of the universe. And that is the difference between servitude and true freedom. Now, standing at Mount Sinai, becoming servants of the Anochi of creation, of the God who can and who seeks and requires to maintain an intimate relationship with every aspect of his creation. Now we are home, and now we are truly free.